Today we're going to talk about basic wound care supplies or basic first aid supplies that can be used on a variety of different skin issues. We're going to be talking about cleaning supplies, contact layers, basic dressings, and ways to secure the dressings. Right now we're going to talk about basic cleaning supplies. It is always important to remember to have a bunch of medical gloves on hand when you're doing any kind of wound care, because you're going to probably go through a lot of these and you don't want to feel like you're cross-contaminating or touching a dirty surface and then touching a clean surface. That's what we mean by cross-contamination. So change your gloves regularly. When in doubt, change your gloves. The cleaning supplies we're going to talk about is basic water, water and soap, saline, and then a wound care wash. So we can use water. And the water could be from a faucet, it could be a water bottle. It doesn't need to be sterile or distilled water. And you're just pouring it over the wound, or maybe you're pouring it on some gauze and then squeezing that water-soaked gauze over the wound to cause a rinsing effect. There's also saline and saline bullets. Saline bullets are often used in the wound care kits that people give away. They're good, you just rip them off and you would squeeze over that pressure. It helps move like dirt and debris off of there. Lastly, there are wound care washes. There's a variety. You may have received some if you've ever been hospitalized, or you may have heard of things like Vash. It's a blue bottle, it's a wound care solution. Next, we're going to talk about contact layers. Contact layers are the things that are directly touching the wound after you've cleaned it. Most likely you're going to be using something like antibiotic ointment, A&D ointment, and Vaseline. Those are all nice, like cheap options for a contact layer that you're either going to apply directly to the dressing and then put it on the wound, or with a gloved hand, you can squeeze out some of the ointment to either put on there, or maybe you have something like a Q-tip where you squeeze it out on there and then you're able to do that. If you are touching the wound directly, please change your gloves after you touch the wound. Now we're going to talk about basic dressings you can use in wound care. We've talked previously about dry wounds and moist wounds, and we said if a wound has a lot of drainage, just add more absorbent layers. You could add things like maxi pads or diapers if the drainage is very heavy. But if we need to have an absorbent layer, we can use something like an ABD pad. ABD is just an abbreviation for abdominal pad, but it's an absorbent material. And then we could use things like gauze squares. Now these gauze squares are not individually packed, so they're not sterile gauze squares, but really they're versatile. We could use them in the cleaning process, whether we're, again, pouring water or wound care wash, and then we're squeezing over the wound and maybe using it to clean. You could also take another handful of them and apply the ointment, the contact layer, onto the gauze square and then put it on, covering your wound. And then if you needed to have more absorption for maybe some heavy drainage, you could use more of the gauze squares. But they can be individually wrapped, but they don't have to be individually wrapped. And then lastly, we know fabric Band-Aids come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, but this is a great option if you have a smaller wound, or if you're, just able to get something like a Band-Aid from a wound care kit or over the counter. So now we're going to talk about how to secure the dressing. We did talk about Band-Aids. Band-Aids are self-adhesive, so that'll stick to the area. Other options we have are rolled gauze. Rolled gauze could also double as cutting it to have some gauze squares if you need to use it for multi-purposes, but you would just wrap it and then secure it either by tucking it into the dressing, or you could use medical tape to tape it down. We want to make sure that we're not wrapping anything too tight, and that'll be super important with Coban, or sometimes referred to as sticky gauze. We want to make sure that when we're using the Coban, that we're unraveling it a little bit. You see the give on it, but we want to make sure that we're not doing it too tight to cut off circulation. We want to make sure that people can still have sensation in their fingers and still move their limb or wherever the wound dressing is being covered. And then lastly, if we are using medical tape or if we're using the Coban, We can write on the tape or the Coban the date that we changed the dressing, and that's just a helpful indicator of when did I last do this, whether it's the person who has the wound or whether it's the person providing the first aid. It just gives you a good example of when did I last do this and when should I do it again.
What did we learn under the video of basic supplies? We talked about cleaning supplies, we talked about contact layer, basic dressings to cover the area, and then dressings to secure the area.